A pregnant woman has been shot and killed by deputies who were responding to a wellness call. Her name was Renee Davis. She was 23 years old, 5 months pregnant, a single mother of 3. She was also a Native American, and she had a history of mental illness and depression. It was because of this that she was actually reported to have been authorities were called to her place. Quote, a relative of Davis called the sheriff's department on Friday after receiving an alarming text from the mother of 3. Police records show that officers responding to a call about a potential suicide encountered a woman with a handgun and 2 small children in the house when they arrived at 6:30 in the evening. Now, much of the details of exactly what happened are still being recovered, but her friends and family didn't know that she had a handgun. They knew that she had a hunting knife and she was an avid hunter, but much of that is still yet to be undetermined. Now, the good news is that her kids both of them are safe. Seattle lawyer Ryan Drevcrack told the Seattle Times, that unfortunately these scenarios are all too common when police interact with people struggling with mental illness. And I know just last week we actually reported on police reporting to the scene of a wellness call, and then shots were fired and indeed killing that person as well. So this is a
schizophrenic lady, I think.
An elderly woman, yes.
Yeah,
and so this is a repeat story, unfortunately, that we've covered on this network before. Cenk, are you surprised about hearing about this again?
No, I'm now really starting to worry that people are not going to call the cops when they need them, because for understandable reasons. Because we've told all the cops, hey man, if there's any threat at all, boom, 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 put them down. Now, if you get called in because someone might be a threat to themselves and they have some sort of weapon, the 66-year-old from last week had a bat, and originally she had a knife, she put it down. Then she had a bat, and she's like, oh, she might swing the bat, boom, 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 shot her and killed her, right? So in this case, she had a gun, or at least that's what the police say right now. Well, okay, I understand that makes it a much more dangerous situation. Last week we talked about you might be able to tase a person with a bat. You might be able to avoid getting hit by a 66-year-old. You might be able to absorb the blow. A gun's a different situation, so I understand that. At the same time, when they call you to help the person, you should really, really go out of your way to try to help them. Like, you can't take extraordinary risks with your life. You know, I often criticize the cops for taking not enough risks. They take no risk. In this case, we had a real risk. We had a gun. If they're right about that.
The narrative there also were children around, and I think they probably, like, the narrative that the police department is trying to put together is that, you know, that she could have been a threat to the children.
Right.
If there was a handgun, and I can't believe that.
But shooting within the apartment is also a threat to the children.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Right. So some police departments do this right. We've talked about it before. Apparently Seattle is on its path to doing it right, but there's a lot of different police departments within the state of Washington. San Antonio does it right. They train their cops to be aware of mental illnesses and how you de-escalate. But unfortunately, a lot of the police departments across the country haven't done that yet, and it is unbelievable negligence on their part not to do it. The number one category of people outside of African Americans to get shot when they're unarmed are people with mental illness issues. And so in the coast, the number one category of people killed again is African Americans. Within the middle of the country where there's less African Americans, the number one category is people with mental issues. Because cops come in, everything's a threat. Oh, he's acting erratically, boom, boom, boom. Okay.
Have you heard?
Last thing is what I started with, which is, now, if this keeps on happening, we're not making it, we're reporting it, right? So it keeps happening over and over. Then you're going to have another problem, which is, well, I got a person acting, with significant issues here. I'm worried they're going to hurt themselves, but I can't call the cops because the cops will kill them, right? And then you've got that set of problems to deal with.
And by the way, so the one thing I want to say is, like, this isn't necessarily new. Have you heard of the term suicide by cop? This has
but that's a little different. So and by the way, so one of the stories we covered, the guy was saying to the cops, like, kill me, or, I hate my life.
Well,
right?
That suicide by cop doesn't necessarily have to mean like, kill me. They don't have to say that, but they'll usually point a gun in their direction knowing full well that the police officers will respond and shoot then kill them.
That's right. So, but I view that to be a separate category. In this case, and in the 66-year-old woman from last week, there was no facts leading us to believe that it was a suicide by cop. They didn't say anything along those lines. They were acting erratically, but they didn't seem to want to die, and that's why their family members called to try to save them.
Especially in the case of the 66-year-old, swinging a bat is not. It doesn't call for that. But what I was trying to say is, this is in our culture. Like, people are aware that police officers will shoot you on sight. Otherwise, no one would think to even come up with something like, oh, suicide by cop. Whereas what I'm saying is it's so pervasive that it happens so frequently that it's a part of our culture, and it's been a part of our culture for a while. It's maybe the silver lining in this instance is that because of the more awareness around it, we now see the Department of Justice probing these departments and then coming out with really conclusive results, really horrific, disproportionate racism, like in the instance of Baltimore Police Department. And hopefully we will be able to rehabilitate some of these police departments, change the structure, and less people will die in the hands of police officers.
Cenk, I thought you brought up a really good point about how Seattle Police has gone to great lengths to train their police force in de-escalation. And so this was really interesting to see that even though the Seattle Police are being trained in techniques of de-escalation, hopefully we'll see that as a positive, that indeed, it's not pervasive enough to spread to the rest of the state. Why do you think that that's still a struggle? So we're seeing it in metropolitan areas, but in more rural areas, this took place on Muckleshoot tribal lands. Techniques of de-escalation aren't even in the conversation yet. What's the holdup?
I know that some people say, they're more likely to do escalation in minority areas, and there's some evidence to that effect. But I actually think that the larger problem is cops are so resistant to any kind of change. Like, oh, whoa, you're meddling in our affairs. You're judging us. You don't get to judge us. And actually, the police unions oftentimes go out of their way to defend cops right or wrong. And I get it, they're a union, right? But it makes them super resistant to change. And in their minds, from their perspective, they feel besieged. And so they're like, no way, we're not doing anything wrong, and we got to protect ourselves. So whereas people are coming to them and saying, hey guys, just calm down for a second. Let's try to figure out how we can all do this better together. But they're like, you're running into a brick wall with an old school way of thinking, which is my way or the highway. And if I'm doing it this way, then it must be right. And I'm never going to change anything. And it's literally getting people killed. We need independent media to make sure that we hold corporate media accountable. The people that can make that happen is you. You make the Young Turks possible. TYTnetwork.com/join. Join us. Be the revolution.